A court order forces the Philadelphia District Attorney to make public a list of officers so troubled prosecutors will not call them to testify about their cases. Does this undermine public trust in the system? Let's get the inside story. Good morning, I'm Tamala Edwards. Welcome to Inside Story. Let's introduce you to the panel. We'll start with nonprofit exec George Burrell.
Good morning, Tam.
We'll also have communications exec Jeff Juvelier.
Good morning, Tamala.
We have another nonprofit exec, Donna Gentile O'Donnell, and attorney and columnist Christine Flowers. Are you an executive and I just don't know it?
No, only in my own mind.
Okay. Well, let's talk about this topic of this list. A court order compelled Larry Krasner to make public the names. We knew there were 29 officers. Now we know the names and what they've been accused of. And a lot of it is really troubling material. Federal investigation for corruption, child sex abuse, drunk driving, assault, domestic abuse, drug dealing, mishandling evidence, lying to authorities, burglary, and that's just a partial list of what's on there. And it's to the point where prosecutors say, this is your case, but I can't have you come on and talk about your case. And everybody who goes chung chung and they watch Law and Order, they know you first see the cops put the case together, then you see the prosecutors, they're supposed to go in together. They can't do that. And it raises a number of questions. When you read this list, you can understand why the public might go, wait a second, this makes me think twice about an officer telling me the way a case went. What is to be done with this information?
Well, I think the critical question is, what are the defenders and defense counsel going to do with it once they've had the disclosure of this information? I assume, I'm not a defense counsel, but I assume they have the power to call them as witnesses. So the fact that the district attorney's office doesn't decide to put them on the stand doesn't mean they won't be on the stand in a particular case. And my concern is much less about these guys that have been disclosed. How do they do this going forward? I mean, there seems to be discretion within the district attorney's office still to decide whether to disclose to defense counsel whether these people exist with problems, and that discretion, to me, should be removed, and they should be obligated to disclose that.
Christine, you're a lawyer. It makes me wonder, even if these officers aren't connected to your case, could you raise the specter of them and say, one apple taints the whole barrel? If this is okay for this person to be on the force, maybe my client isn't getting a good deal. Like, does this open the door for all kinds of shenanigans when it comes to trials?
It absolutely does, and you can see already that there have been lawsuits, civil rights suits filed, attempts to have prior convictions overturned when the names of some of these officers who were on that list have been released. What George was saying, these names, this information should have been turned over as what they call Brady material. When there's anything that could be not disculpative, that could sort of go toward the innocence of a particular defendant, the prosecutor is obligated to turn that information over to a defendant, to a defense counsel. And if there is some question about the credibility and the character of the witness, of the police officers who are foundational to a case, that information should have been handed over. I think it's great that the names are being made public. I think it's important because, for transparency's sake, the public needs to be convinced that the people who are prosecuting these cases are doing the right thing, and that years down the line we're not going to have these convictions overturned because of this type of chicanery and hand clasping.
Donna, the other side of this story is what happens. I think 9 of these officers of the 29 are back on the force, and it's kind of like a revolving wheel. You go out, they do the investigation. The police command says, we got to take them back. Arbitration says they come back. They get paid a salary, maybe back pay. And so the taxpayer gets it going and coming. And it sounds like there's no way. What can be done to fix this?
So importantly, I think we need to start with what's the basis for all of this. So all of these actions that are taken when officers are engaged in improper acts and they find themselves being a defendant versus being someone who's trying to uphold the rule of law, all of this is governed by arbitration rules. And those arbitration rules are also governed by Act 111. So we have
Nobody
to
out
go
there knows
all
what
the-
Act 111 is.
It's the legislative vehicle which establishes standards by which
So the
arbitration
bottom
can
line is
occur.
Governor
This
Wolf
is-
needs to get involved and
well,
say we
the
have to fix
Republican
this.
legislature needs to take action on this because the governor can only approve or veto anything that hits his desk. So I would urge the Republican leadership that's committed to the rule of law to do that.
Jeff, you're not being quiet just because you feel like being quiet. We'll explain to everybody why you've been a little laid back.
Absolutely, thank you. Our firm and I do a little bit of work now with the Fraternal Order of Police, and that's important to disclose here. And it's very difficult subject matter to come on TV and encounter. But what I will say, just a couple of tidbits. I
Well,
think
wait. I want to hit you with the main question.
Okay.
If I'm a cop and I hear this, I'm furious. I'm out there and I'm trying to do a good job. We know that the FOP and the GOP have had a long history of supporting each other and wanting to move things forward, but I would go to them and say, I want you to get these guys out of here because they're making things harder for the good guys.
You're right.
But all the quotes I see from the FOP, all the comments are, leave it alone. This is the way it should be. Why aren't they at the forefront of saying, we got to change this?
Well, listen, if people are found guilty in the court of law, they should not be on the force. I think they've agreed that, and those people have been removed from the force. When you're talking about this list, let me tell you, first of all, the FOP had no idea the list even existed. It was not disclosed to them. When they were called by a reporter, which was leaked by probably someone in the prosecution's office, they said, what list? They just got the list. The list was created by former DA, now in prison. Not it's going to list Seth
That's
Williams.
great,
it was
but
his
the
office.
information on the
It's
list is
actually
pretty
not true.
terrible. It doesn't matter
No, it
how
looks
or why
terrible.
it came out.
But if you look at arbitration even, if you look at the people that are assigned to determine the case, the police, the advisory board, everyone thinks the FOP, all they care about is the cops. They have no say who's on that arbitration panel. So we can absolutely talk about the system. But let's be really careful, I'm saying, to talk about the police, the FOP and the police as a whole is all about just keeping their police to the force. Under John McNesby, he has been sued, or the union has been sued, for failure to represent police more than ever before. You don't see that in the news. So again, there are many things that I'm not just trying to defend, but I'm saying there is some more context to this story.
I'm not sure they don't have a voice in who the arbitrators are. There's a panel, I think, the city, and they pick one.
The commissioner has a say. The union does not get a say.
I do think they have a say.
They do not.
If I can back
They
up
do
to
not.
one point, the list was not actually created in the DA's office. It was created by the internal investigation group of police. There are folks
In the DA's office?
No. In the police department, they are mystified as to how that list migrated over to the DA's office. So that's like another whole area that needs to be looked at because there's some real questions about how did that happen.
Why is it a problem to have this list in the first place? I don't find this controversial at all. If you have a group of police officers
I agree with you. I
who
think
it should be shared.
institutionally
Yeah.
you don't trust, why not keep a list
Well,
of
Jeff,
them?
you're a communications executive. Let's go with this a different way, which is clearly if you're trying to, in this day and age where police are so under fire, everything's being videotaped.
Yep.
As with everything, things are changing. You would think that you said, we got to get out in front of this and do more. Maybe this would have worked 10 years ago, 20 years ago. This list is going to add to our troubles. Let's get this. Let's do something to get the people who are troubled out of here. Is there going to be something different from the FOP to push for that?
Well, first, they have to understand, first, they just got the list, just like Krasner. DA Krasner just got the list, and he's still vetting it as we speak here today. Second, they need to know about it. The protocol by which officers are put on the list, they didn't have it. They just received it in the last week or so as well. So they need to be part of the solution, absolutely. There's no disagreement there, and I'm not here to just be a mouthpiece for my client. But they have to be part of the solution.
You're amusing, George.
Well,
But
I know where he
here's-
stands too.
George, you've been a city official. Here's another side of this. The public costs, millions of dollars every year are paid to people in the aftermath of arrests that are then turned into cases. In 2013, $14 million was paid out to the public. 2012, $8.3 million. Again, taxpayers are paying for arrests not being handled properly, officers doing the wrong thing. It would also seem as though Mayor Kinney would want to get in here and say, that's a lot of money. We keep talking about a budget we can't get to balance. I'd rather not pay for this.
Well, the older I get, the better I understand the concept of inertia. And these things just have a life of their own, and nobody, to stop the inertia, somebody has to take a strong stand and then stand with that stand for over a period of time to bring people to the table. We all understand that most police officers are good, hardworking folks.
right.
But there is a clear pattern that there are a number of them who violate the rules. And everybody, the FOP, the mayor, Republicans, Democrats, should be committed to doing that, getting rid of that, because it costs the taxpayers when these lawsuits occur, and it costs the taxpayers when they win arbitration and bad police officers are brought back to the force.
But the mayor's getting flack because he has come out and said, look, we're going to put all this information online when there are complaints. And actually before, once a complaint was finished and investigated, you could go and get the documents and would have all the information. Now it's online, but it's just initials from who's complaining, witnesses, victims, and police officers. And this happened back in August, but it feels as though there's new blowback with the community saying, nobody asked us about this. Do you think this stands, or do you think he's going to have to backtrack on this?
I spoke to the mayor on this subject, and he was very clear that what they are trying to do is to be responsive to citizens who have legitimate complaints, but also to be protective of officers who there needs to be an investigation.
Yeah.
Their families need to be
Due process
protected.
all around.
There has to be due process. There has to be a rule of law, and there has to be a
So then once the
fairness.
case, why not go back to the rule that once it's over and investigated, especially if the officer's been found to be in the wrong, then more information is forthcoming. So future victims, reporters trying to
We're
shed
back
light.
to the arbitration rules, because all of these things are embedded in that contract. If they can change the arbitration rules, then they have
But this wasn't the case under Rindell or Nutter. This was a change made by Kenny.
Well, what he was trying to do was balance the issues on both sides, for victims that felt that they had been unfairly treated, and for cops that needed to be investigated.
You know what,
and
Tim?
Sorry,
no,
please go
no,
ahead.
no, and I whatever Donna said, absolutely. but you know, the idea that I only think personally that people who have been found, police officers who have been found guilty after due process and an investigation, that their names should be made public. I don't think that people who have been accused and there's been an investigation and then they've been cleared, I don't know why those names have to be made public, because
For an investigation
there's a stigma regardless. If you say, oh, somebody can file a false complaint against a police officer,
reason.
that stigma will still attach. And if that person has
I don't
been
think
cleared,
anybody's disagreeing with you. I think it's more the general idea
But
that we
right now, if they
we have
changed it
information
back-
that takes
Right.
us nowhere.
If they take it back,
they
the
change it back, it
investigation's
does
not
go to
done,
that.
and anybody can make a complaint. Say it's a divorce, proceeding divorce. Say, oh, my husband's a cop. I don't like him.
Right.
I'm going to complain about
But
it.
I don't think anybody's saying we want that to happen. We're saying in cases of like people of these
Sure.
29, can we go back to a system where somebody else who has something happen can go to the record and see what is going on? Do I have a cop who's questionable?
But they can. They
investigation's
can
I don't think
cross-reference
anybody
it.
questions the mayor's
Yes.
commitment to transparency. I think the question, and I think most people would agree that people have been accused of something
Right.
they shouldn't necessarily have their name disclosed. But once you've gotten to the end of the road,
Right.
then I think there's a different question about whether those people's names should be known. And I think that when a leader like Reverend Mark Tyler, the pastor at Mother Bethel Church, says that there is a need for community participation and a revisiting of this question, at least it requires some attention to be paid to it.
Very quickly, we saw the GOP candidates for the governor's race meet here in Philadelphia. They agreed on a lot of things, they disagreed on a lot of things, and one of the weirdest things they disagreed on was Paul Mango going out after Scott Wagner saying that he wants boys in the girls' bathroom. Because Wagner says he was in support of a bill, anti-discrimination in housing, employment, etc. Laura Ellsworth, the third person, seemed to roll her eyes and go, there's not going to be a rush on the bathrooms. But it's an interesting tactic by Mango. Wagner has said, I'm more Trump than Trump. He seemed to be trying to outflank him on the right.
Yep.
Was this a smart move or a dumb move for Mango?
Hey, if it's about winning the primary, perhaps it was a smart move. But from a general election perspective, from 90%, I would agree, plus of Pennsylvanians, it was not a smart move. If Laura Ellsworth could raise a little bit of money, she is the candidate, the most rational, conservative but rational positions that could cause Tom Wolf a little bit of agita.
And if Scott Wagner looks balanced and moderate on anything,
my
you
goodness,
know that
the Republican
Mango
Party
is way
is-
out in the forest somewhere.
That's a statement.
Tom Wolf is laughing.
But they are, I think that Wagner and Mango, they both have resolved that the only way there's a possibility to win is to be Donald Trump and get the magnetism that Donald Trump got in the T in this Commonwealth, and that there is a frustration among traditional Democratic voters who don't turn out.
right.
And
Well,
that's
I-
their strategy.
I
It's
think-
not about substance.
I agree that that's their strategy, and I think it's a wrong strategy because I think we're going to see a reaction in Pennsylvania unlike we've ever seen before. Anybody that's aligning themselves with Donald Trump, I think is going to be they're going to be very disappointed.
I just felt like for every voter Mango maybe picked up, he just shed 5. It just
I
seemed
think
like
that's
an
right.
interesting. My consultant told me to do this, and he was a consultant. He should.
I used to work for his consultant too, John Brabender, so I work for everyone, but not today. I want to be clear; it's not what I would agree to.
We're going
Just
to
the
take
FOP.
We're going to take a break.
George and everyone.
We're going to take a break and come back to more Inside Story.